welcome to this episode of Ask a Consultant. Today we're going to talk about the top environmental considerations and factors that might slow down your renewable natural gas project. I'm Jennifer Wolf, an Associate Director in our Compliance and Permitting Division at Braun Intertech. Sarah?
And I'm Sarah B., a Senior Manager also in our Permitting and Compliance Division at Braun Intertech. Today we're discussing factors that could potentially slow down a renewable natural gas project. When we think about any renewable natural gas project, we're taking a three-prong approach, and that includes managing the regulatory environment, the site design, and managing public perception. To start with, let's talk about some of the basics of RNG. Jen?
Good idea. Let's make sure that we're all using the terminology the same way. So moving forward in our conversation, when we say RNG, we're referring to renewable natural gas. RNG is a term that describes biogas being used to fuel or energy in the same way that you would use natural gas in same places. RNG can be extracted from a landfill or it can be produced through something, say, an anaerobic digester. The process starts with a renewable energy source, such as agricultural waste, wastewater, food waste, waste food, anything from a food manufacturer, or plant material, which is then put through an anaerobic digester. The outcome is renewable natural gas, or RNG, and a sludge material that can be used as a fertilizer.
Renewable gas technologies have been around for a long time. However, now it's starting to gain traction in the US, and we're moving to operations of a larger scale. Most of the emerging RNG market is focused on food waste or combined food waste and agricultural waste. This is a shift from a predominantly landfill, wastewater treatment plant, and straight agricultural fuel source.
Why do you think there's been such a dramatic increase in these RNG projects?
Gosh, Jen, a lot of reasons. Most of them come down to profits. As companies with their stakeholders and customers become more motivated by social governance, there's a drive for cleaner energy with a lower carbon footprint. This is supported by a number of tax incentives, including the USDA Rural Energy for America program and tax credit that was part of the Inflation Reduction Act. We're also seeing traditional oil and gas companies move into this sector as a way of meeting their customers' needs and diversifying their portfolios. You could say green is gold.
That's awesome. So this leads us to one of the most frequently asked questions from our RNG developers, owners, and engineering firms, and that is, are there going to be any regulatory challenges at my site? Sarah?
There can definitely be some regulatory challenges at your site. We've seen a lot of variation on how the different states treat RNG in terms of permitting, but there's a few common denominators. On the air side of the house, it's all about having good data and having a solid plan on how to control the emissions. With biodigesters, particularly food or co-digestion facilities, being something of an emerging technology, the industry standards are still being developed. That means a lot of agencies need to be educated while you're preparing your permit, or before if you could. The gold star in education is sharing information and what has been approved by other agencies. In practice, this looks like sending studies or sample results from a sister or pilot facility with your application so the agency knows what to expect in terms of emissions. This means working with manufacturers of control equipment to get details on how controls work, what its operating parameters are, and efficiencies at those parameters.
That's great. In addition, one item that we've seen for non-air permits is how states classify the food waste if you're bringing in food waste. It's pretty straightforward process if you're just using agricultural waste, like such as manure. But when you start using food waste from, like, say, a food manufacturer, some states actually have classifying that as an industrial waste rather than a renewable resource or just as a feedstock material for your RNG project. Well, this seems like a small issue. It can cause issues when it comes to obtaining your environmental permits, so what to do with the digest date at the end of the project. So in this example, in the state that regulates it as an industrial waste, you can't take the liquid digest date and apply it as a fertilizer on fields, which it is certainly appropriate for because they're managing it differently. So these are some of the things that you have to work out with the agencies ahead of time. How does this fit into their existing regulatory framework, and educating them on the appropriate uses of their existing regulatory framework. When possible, we recommend having a pre-application meeting with the agencies because it can go a long way to understanding where the agency is coming from, what issues are going to be hard for them to understand or to overcome, and to get a general sense on how to manage your project. All right, And this brings us to another big question that we get. Are there going to be site design challenges on my RNG projects? What do I mean by that? For example, is this an appropriate place to put an anaerobic digester? How do I leverage my existing technology on a new site? We've talked a lot about potential site concerns and regulatory concerns, but we've noticed some external forces as well that have impacted RNG projects. Sarah?
Yeah, let's talk about some of those site design challenges that we've seen. The biggest site design challenge I've seen has definitely been related to air dispersion modeling. In many states, there's a requirement to model the distribution of air pollutants before a permit can be issued. This ensures that air is not made unhealthy for the environment around the site, the people that are not there and working there. This is a very site specific and process specific requirement that can have results including relocating parts of the process or even including changing it altogether.
Those would be some big issues. There's other site challenges as well, and these are ones that most developers are a little bit more familiar with: wetlands, endangered species, and floodplains, just to name a few. And remember, of course, that some of these permits may require site setbacks or discharge requirements that will limit where things can be placed during the development. We've had some projects, as Sarah mentioned, that have had to be redesigned based on some of these requirements. Most of these items can be identified during a review of site conditions at the start of a project. Planning ahead so that you come into a project understanding the regulatory requirements that might apply for your particular site and your particular operations is a very helpful way to head off costly delays.
Thanks, Jen. We've talked about the regulatory environment, and we've talked about site design, but one of the other things that's really important to consider is the public perception. We're looking down the road in an environmental justice, and this is something developers should be doing when they're thinking about their RNG projects as well. There's a lot that goes into educating ourselves and the agency. What is managing the public perception and information like, Jen?
Well, and this is really a large issue and one that's still emerging. And it's going to take a lot of different approaches, I think, to manage it well. Recently, I've noticed industry groups like the American Biogas Council starting to tackle this question for their members. I mean, there's a lot of disinformation online, as you can imagine, and it's going to take a group effort to combat that.
Thanks, Jen. This is going to wrap us up for today. We hope you found this RNG discussion information valuable. If you have any questions about your RNG project, reach out by filling the Contact Us form on our website, and we'll be in touch.